This is something very critical to you bow hunters out there, and I want to explain this. This is something that has been very critical to all the bucks I've ever shot. I don't know how many deer I've shot with a bow, but when it comes to a mature buck cruising by 40, 35, 45, whatever it is, it's been very critical to follow this simple rule, and it's something I came up with a long time ago. You can even look up the bow hunting 10-second rule. It's out there somewhere on Google. I wrote an article about this because I looked at the average time that I had to shoot a mature buck from the time I saw that buck, determined he was a shooter, grabbed my bow, and pulled back. That time that I had was less than 10 seconds. And I can still look at the bucks I've shot recently when they came in. From the time I shot them to the time I saw them, usually about 10 seconds. And why is that? I'm not hunting fields. I'm not hunting food plots typically. That'd be a little bit different. They come out, you get to wait till they come closer. They might be in the field for a half hour, 20 minutes. But typically if you're hunting back in the woods where you're going to experience the highest success rates, then you have to follow the 10-second rule. Kind of what I like, and might skip ahead to, number 3 here. I typically take a sitting shot. I like to set up so that my shot is right here, so that I can just simply grab my bow. I have my bow on a hanger. So when I'm sitting down, I want that bow somewhere in this range. My shot, I want to be somewhere in that range. Now I'm prepared if I have to stand up and shoot down over there, back there. But when I'm in a sitting shot, I can take from my tree stand and sitting, I can shoot all the way around like that, almost 180 degrees. I'm planning for that 180 degrees. Something happens over here, I'll wait for it to get by, stand up, try to take a shot. I want that bow hanging right here. So I usually use a bow hanger or a branch to hang that on. But that's right here. I have my arrow already ready to go, right on that bow. I want it vertical. I don't want it laying on my lap. I don't want it behind me hanging up. I want it to be simply, deer is probably going to be in this range or over here, over there. I can simply take my release, put it on the string, take it off, pull back, and then get that shot. And that's the movement you need. You can't stand up and then take the shot, typically. From the time you see that buck to actually stand up, get ready for the shot, grab your bow, too much movement, too much time. Has to be ready to draw. Easy to make the mistake of not being ready and for that buck to come by. It's difficult because this bow hunting rule, TV is misleading. What I mean by that is you see people shooting deer over food plots, some of the big name hunting industry stars. You don't realize that they have thousands of acres, they have hundreds of acres of food plots, they have dozens if not hundreds of setups on food sources, food plots, and then go in and hunt a food source once or twice a year, if that, depending on if they have a mature buck there that they want. Then go in and hunt unsuspecting low pressure deer, and they're sitting right in a food source and they have all the time in the world for that deer to come out. It's munching on some greens that they had other people plant, and then they take a shot. That's not realistic for 99.999% of all other hunters in the country. It's very misleading. It makes it look like I have all the time in the world. Experience confirms this. You just need to spend a lot of time hunting in the woods, shooting deer, and you'll see you don't have a lot of time. But science can also be very misleading. And what I mean by that is we're taught in the science community, you're taught by the science community, that you need to look at the body characteristics to age a deer. That's very, very misleading because you don't have time in most circumstances to age a deer by its body as it's coming towards you. Now, maybe you've already pre-identified those deer. You know, a horizontal picture, looking at it on a trail camera, static, and you can study it and say, you know what, I think this is 6.5, or I think this is 2.5 or 3.5 years old. Whatever it might be, you can get a good glimpse at that buck while it's just sitting there. And then the only problem is, again, your bow's already ready to go. You're almost ready to take a shot. You have to see that deer, identify that deer, grab your bow, pull back, take it off the hanger, and shoot within that 10 seconds. So you don't have a lot of time to look at that deer and say, yep, that's Charlie. Or that's our giant buck moe. We need to shoot. You don't have a lot of time, and that's why science can be misleading, because we're told to age deer and to make decisions based on body, and there's typically not enough time to do that. There's enough time in some, say, southeast area where you have giant plantations, pine plantations, green fields, big paper company lands. Texas, where you're hunting senderos, you have a guide, and you're looking at this deer for 20 minutes before you get to take a shot, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. But folks, that's not the real world. How do you age a buck? You know, what's going on? I want you to remember when a deer's coming in, I want you to remember antlers and attitude. And what I mean by that is an older buck typically walks slower, doesn't prance around, has, of course, a big body. You can see that at a glance. Wow, it looks like a big deer. But I've seen some 220-pound field dress 3-year-olds. So just because it's a big body doesn't mean it's necessarily older. You have the back line, the stomach, the neckline. There's other things, the hindquarters compared to the shoulders. There's other things you can look at with the body to age. But again, we're looking at a 10-second window on the majority of wood shot or cover shot deer. So you have to make a determination quick. Antlers can lead you down the right path almost all the time. And what I mean by that is not the overall score or the number of points, the number of inches. What you're looking at is, and I want to point this out, when you have sheds, for example, a lot of shed antlers. You see here some I use for my rattling antlers right here. They're bone white. Why are they bone white? Because they've been sitting out bleached in the sun. When a buck first strips its velvet, it's dark. A lot of the bucks being shot right now in September, late September, early October, are darker antlers. They haven't been exposed to the sun outside of the velvet. So they're darker. It's kind of nature's way. A lot of people think, well, the antlers are darker because they rub them on darker trees, and that's not necessarily true. So if a buck is back in the swamps, back in the shade, it's not exposed to sun, it'll keep that dark pitch to the antlers. That's why antlers a lot of times are the same color throughout. Other than where they rub a lot, it gets lighter colored. But they're the same color throughout, not because they meticulously work some type of brush that stain those antlers evenly. It's because they haven't been exposed to the sun. And what you find with older bucks, they're not prancing around out in the open very much, like the younger bucks, does, and fawns. They're staying back in the cover. They're not out during the daylight as much out in the open. Therefore, their antlers stay a little bit darker along with their coat. If their coats are out in the sunlight, it's kind of nature's way of protecting them too. Big old swamp buck's darker. Big old marsh buck, lighter grass, lighter antlers, lighter body, they blend in more. It's kind of like they blend into their surroundings. They're great. Deer are pretty cool at camouflaging themselves with their surroundings just based on their coat, the shading on their coat, and certainly the coloration of their antlers and coat. And that's one thing I like to look at, is this dark antlered buck coming my way. They're going to be darker than everything else, typically. You can't always say. Antlers are typically going to be a little bit heavier. Long beams. A lot of Canadian outfitters will look at a buck from the side. If the main beam comes all the way out to the tip of the nose, great way to judge that it's an older class, age class buck. Those 2-year-olds might be more even with the ears. A 3-year-old, 4-year-old might be more mid-snout area, mid-nose area. But then when it gets out to the tip, that represents some of the older bucks in the area, the way they grow up there. The bottom line is, when you're looking at jawbone, we have a really good chart that the QDMA put out many years ago, 256 known bucks, 250 some anyways. And even a 2-year-old buck, a jawbone was only right 78% of the time. And when it gets down to a 6-year-old buck, I want to say it was 18% accurate on a jawbone. People say, oh, jawbone's a way that biologists can estimate the age of an animal compared to other animals of similar jaws and wear and tooth wear. But it's not an exact science in any way. And someone that tells you, boy, that's a 4-year-old buck at a check station, they're not even research biologists. They're not even trained whitetail research biologists. They're making a guesstimation, and what you find is they're probably right well less than half the time. Tooth wear, I used to think was 90-some%, where you put where you send a tooth in to a lab and they check it. But even on that same chart will show that tooth wear wasn't much better than actual jawbone aging. And I would say the average for an 8-year-old that bucks within that 8 years, I think that sending a tooth in might have been 50% right, 40%, 30%. It might even been down in the high 20s at some point, depending on the age. But it was definitely more in the middle, a little bit better than jawbone aging. But bottom line is, you can't judge a jawbone, you can't judge a tooth when it's walking in. A lot of times you don't have any way that you have time to judge the body characteristics of that deer. It all boils down to making a 10-second decision, and that's why you have to be ready. I look at the mass of antlers, maybe how long those main beams are, Don't look for score. You look at bucks in your area, and you'll be able to tell that buck's a little bit older. Dylan, I don't know if you can grab that one that's one of Jen's there on the plaque. This is a buck right here. Not a very high scoring buck, but who would look at this buck right here and tell me that it's the same age as this one? Nobody. So the point is that look at the extremities of anything. You know, someone tells you the weather doesn't determine when bucks move. Ask them, so how many bucks and deer in general are out during a blizzard in an open field that they would have been without that blizzard? None. Pouring rain, thunder, and lightning. They don't move much. Extremely high winds, extremely hot weather during the rut. They move more at night. So weather greatly influences movement. Maybe not the total miles per day, but we're only hunters hunting during the daylight. So that's what matters. But bottom line is with antlers, you can obviously tell with mass. And even if you look at this buck compared to these sheds right here, these are two, to me, would be two different age bucks. This one's thinner. This one's heavier. Doesn't have anything to do with score. The bases are bigger here, smaller here. And then look at this. These look like three different age classes. And if I add the one I just had up right there, that's a fourth age class. You can really easily, within a given area, look at bucks and say, you know what, that's a 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5 plus, based on age. And you can even move it up to 5-year-old in a lot of areas. At least look at those age classes. And let's face it, as hunters, do we really care if it's a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old? Dylan, do you care if it's a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old?
Give me a nice 3-year-old.
The point is, too, I know if it was a 3-year-old, a 7 or a 5-year-old, you're not going to try to narrow it down. You're going to shoot.
Yeah.
It's and so that's what I think we need to worry more about as hunters. And I see on the back of that plaque, it says Jen 2019. So she shot that buck in 2019. She shot a lot of nice bucks, and that's one of them. But the point is, antlers can really lead you down an accurate path of making a decision for shoot or not. Whether you're looking for a 2-year-old, you want it around 15 inches wide, little 8-point, or you want to shoot at a 5-year-old, 6-year-old goals. But you have to learn those quickly in the field. Look for that stocky, slower walk, more methodical, darker coats, darker antlers, and then you'll be able to fit your age estimation and identifying the buck you want to shoot within that 10-second window. Maybe it's easier for you. Maybe you like shooting any buck. And that's fine too. And then you just, that's a buck. You grab your bow, put your release on a string, pull back. Guess what? You still have to do it in under 10 seconds. Either way. It's not that much. It should be, when you identify that buck as a shooter, it should be about the same amount of time as you just looking at the buck and saying it's a buck. You don't get much more time than that. And maybe another half second to determine that it's a shooter or not. 1 second. Maybe you have time to lift your binoculars. But a lot of times if you lift your binoculars, you just missed your shot.
Can I add something here?
Sure.
Act like it's a shooter. Get your bow. And so what? You got ready,
my gosh.
and a 2-year-old comes through.
Are you trying to slam me from last year? when I had my needle in my eye? So I had a buck walk by. He was definitely a 6-year-old. I had actually missed the morning before, and this was the evening the next day. I got my first shot for diabetes in my eye, and it was a pain. I had a patch on my left eye, and it kept watering. It was hurting. I kept putting drops in it. I'm out in the field, worried about my eye to begin with. Not too pleasant having a needle stuck in it. And I see a buck coming over here, which I would have had to turn my head a little bit because I couldn't even see out of my left. I had a patch on. See, it's a buck. Instead of grabbing my bow, like Dylan's saying, getting ready to turn and take a shot over here, I looked around to confirm what it was with my right eye. Only took 30 seconds. The problem was, that was my first glimpse of him right there. Grab the bow, stand up, turn to make the shot. He had already 20, 25 yards away, and I screwed up bad because I didn't do what Dylan said. I didn't act like it was the one buck that I was after in Wisconsin on that small property, a buck that I really like to shoot this year. The bottom line is I really messed up because I didn't act like it was a buck. I didn't. My actions didn't allow it to fall within 10 seconds. If I would have seen him over here, gotten ready, I would have shot him within 10 seconds when I first saw him. I relied more on 15, 16 seconds and blew the deal. I don't want you to blow it. This is a critical bow hunting rule that you have to get through your head when you're heading out to the fall, this this hunting season and
When
beyond.
you're heading, say that again, just finish again. When you're heading out to the woods this fall.
This is a critical bow hunting rule when you're heading out to the woods this fall, during this hunting season and beyond. Now, I appreciate you guys watching the YouTube channel, but I don't know if everyone knows everything that we have to offer, whether it's on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, our website, or WHS Wildlife Blends, our seed company. Also, Instagram you can check out. I'm very active on Instagram, putting strategies on there, photos of what we do every day. Much more active there than Facebook. But our seed, web classes, books, clients, articles. I have over 600 articles on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, everything whitetail strategy. Of course, we have hats on there, and then make sure to check us out on Instagram again. But lots of stuff to offer. We're always coming out with new things, and this isn't the end of it. We have more things coming soon. Make sure to check us out.